Last time we recorded was August 2024, and some good takeaways from there, and it's a good time to revisit. That video ended up doing fairly well. Lots of action, I'm assuming, on your end. I've been following your channel, and I've watched some of your latest videos, especially as it pertains to real estate. So I want to kind of go over and see in terms of not so much predictions, but just the shift in sentiment and directionally where we are today. So, um, in 2024, I guess directionally we knew things are headed for an interesting place. And you're pretty good at actually sticking your neck out and making predictions and things like that because who doesn't like a good prediction to reflect on a year later? I guess from where you sit, what has surprised you the most about financial behavior this year from people?
Um, I guess the big picture is, I think there are two different economies. Maybe there's an infinite number of economies. We each live in our own little bubble, right? So if you are doing well, you got a job, you're making good money, you're in the stock market, the stocks you picked are up, your house is still holding its value, whatever, then everything is great. But if you are somebody who bought a rental property in February of 2022, thinking that prices always go up and it's going to be great, you're really hurting right now. So I think what surprises me the most is how different the perceptions of those two groups are. Now, obviously, I'm an insolvency guy. I'm not having meetings with the people who are multi-billionaires. They're not coming in to see me. But the people I am meeting with are shocked at how bad it has gotten. And again, it's not hard to understand the math. If you bought a pre-con in 2020, 21, 22, 23, whatever it was, and now you're getting the call from the builder, hey, it's ready for occupancy, and you paid $1 million for it, thinking it would be worth 1,500,000 5 years later, and you'd be able to flip it and make a big chunk of money. And now you find out that you'll be lucky to get 800,000 for it. And maybe it's 700,000. And maybe there's actually no sales at all in that building. So what do you do? Well, there's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
Because when you go to the bank and say, yeah, I put down a $100,000 deposit on this $1 million place, so I need to come up with $900,000. Will you give me a $900,000 mortgage? And the bank says the place is worth 700,000. No, we're not giving you a $900,000 mortgage. You got a problem. So if you are one of those people, things are horrible. But if you're somebody who has owned your house for 30 years, oh, well, it's been a little blip in the market. So I think the surprising thing is how different those two things are, those two groups are. And if you don't live in one or the other of those groups, you don't understand what's happening to the other person.
Yeah, that is so true. And I guess, I'm guilty of it because if I'm working with people trading in real estate, even an economy like this, these are people that are generally insulated. But I gotta tell you, even in real estate, you can kind of see it. So for example, let's say you're selling a regular house, let's say under 1.5 million, which is super expensive, but we call that a regular home these
Mhm.
days, right? Okay, that stuff, you're rolling over some equity, things are good. But what I've noticed is there's this element of real estate between, let's say, 1.5 million up to like 3.5 million. That's what I would refer to as the working class rich. So these are not people that are wealthy in the way where their primary residence is a rounding error, right? Those people are shopping in the $6 million price point, most likely. So I'm noticing that even there, these working class rich people, we're talking like doctors probably early in their days, and things like that, they're affected. Like you're seeing that price point really take a hit right now, at least where I work. And, even though we've had one of the worst years on record, certain things are moving, but these expensive homes are not. And I guess a lot of it is sentiment. And now, you're seeing the stock market take a bit of a beating here and there. And then now you're starting to see people kind of pull away. But in terms of behaviors, because obviously you've seen a few cycles like this in the past, are you noticing any new patterns just based on, I guess, a new economy. I guess the problems are always the same. They're money problems, but new patterns with like maybe denial or panic or avoidance with people.
Yeah, I think, and you're right. I'm an old man. I've seen a few cycles in my time. Um, I think the new pattern I see in a certain segment of the population is um, resignation, giving up.
Mm.
So I bought my first house. It was a townhouse in when I was 25 years old. Now it was 1989, so different era. But um, nobody who's 25 years old today can buy a property. That's not a thing. Unless your parents are giving you the money or you just sold your startup to Google for $1 billion, you cannot buy a property if you're 25 years old. Because if the typical property is $1 million or whatever market you're in, okay, so if I want a conventional mortgage, I need a $200,000 down payment. And I'm 25 years old. I graduated from school when I'm 22, so I've had 3 years to pay off my student loan debt, and somehow now I've magically got a $200,000 down. It's just not a thing. And so what I'm seeing from the chunk of the population who comes in to talk to me is that they know there is no hope. They know that they are the first generation in hundreds of years who potentially will be significantly worse off than their parents. So if you did everything right, you went to school, got an education, graduated, and found out there are no fantastic jobs, and so it's going to take until age 30 at best to pay off my student loans, maybe age 35. And then I can start thinking about maybe I'll get married or something because I can't afford to do it before then. But even if I do that, and even if my spouse and I both have an okay, decent income, there's no way we're going to be able to save up for a down payment and buy a property. So I guess I might as well just give up. And I'm seeing that more than I've ever seen. And again, I understand I am talking to a slice of the population. This is not a generalization for everybody in the world, but there are an increasing number of people who that is their perception. So if it's like, okay, I mean, and I remember when I was a young man, um, I started my career first 10 years working for the big accounting firms. So, okay, I worked hard because I knew if I worked hard, worked late, showed up a few Saturdays, then okay, I'd probably get promoted. I'd probably be able to make more money. There was a point to it. Whereas now, for most people, not, again, not most people, but for a segment of the population, it's like, well, so if I work really hard, probably next year my company's going to get bought out by somebody else and I'll be kicked to the sidelines anyways. So why would I work extra hard? I'm still not going to be able to earn enough to buy a house or maybe even a decent car or get married or anything. So you know what? I might as well put in my 9 to 5, do what I got to do to pay my rent and buy my groceries, and maybe I'll go out and have a beer with the boys or play some video games or something because there's no real point in working extra hard. And again, I'm talking about perceptions here, but as you just alluded to, it is perceptions that drive the market. If I perceive that real estate prices will probably be lower next year, am I going to buy a property now? No, I'll wait till next year.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think, the biggest psychological change that I've seen, and it's becoming more and more pronounced. And if you follow that line of reasoning through, and maybe I'm totally wrong in what I'm saying. So people can put their notes in the comments about how wrong I am. But so, okay, I don't perceive there's any hope. I don't perceive I'll ever be able to buy a house or do anything like that. So one option is, you know what, I'll just give up. I'll just roll with the punches and not worry about it. The other option, though, would be maybe I got to go all in. Maybe I got to be a little riskier in my thinking. So, hey, I watched the Blue Jays. Every single ad was for online gambling, sports betting. Maybe I should do that. Maybe I can make a buck doing that. Maybe I should understand this whole stock market thing because we've now got apps on our phone, not only to buy stocks, but I can be trading options and doing all this other stuff and foreign currency and whatever. Maybe I got to get into crypto. Maybe I just got to go to the casino. So what we are seeing is a significant increase in what in our business we call, hazardous behavior, gambling, risky behavior, whatever. Because again, if I have no hope, why not roll the dice? Well, I think real estate is partly that. Why would somebody 5 years ago who makes $50,000 a year or $100,000 a year, why would they have gone out and bought four pre-cons?
Yeah.
Did they actually hope they think they would be able to occupy them or sell them or even get a mortgage for them? No, they figured roll the dice. If they go up in value, I put $100,000 deposit down. Maybe I can do an assignment sale for 200,000 and double my money. That's gambling. And real estate is a great place to gamble because you can actually, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, I believe you can buy a house with 5% down.
Up to a certain price point, yeah.
Up to a certain price point, and obviously CMHC insurance, I get all
Yeah.
that. You can't buy a stock for 5% down. That's not a thing. Margin requirements for a blue chip stock, I don't know what they are, 50% or whatever.
Yeah, 50. Yeah.
And, and yet you can do that with real estate. So I put real estate for certain people in the same bucket as every other form of gambling. Now, again, I'm making a somewhat silly statement because if someone buys a house for their family to live in for the next 20 years, I don't think that's gambling. But I am seeing more and more of that behavior. And obviously, that's somewhat distressing.
Yeah, it seems like it's desperation, right?
Desperation.
Which is kind of scary. The scariest thing is the fact that you're noticing people are resigning. It's like, hey, you know what it is? I can't do it. Like giving up hope, ultimately. It's hopelessness. And that
Mhm.
is that is a scary place to be. Coming from Eastern Europe and that entire world is just that, right? It's just hopelessness. That's why people leave because there's no future. That is a scary place to be. And I mean, I'm more of an optimist, but I that is definitely the perception in a subsegment of the population, 100%, and it's very pronounced online. This is why online I really take issue with some influencers, content makers, with just a lot of the clickbait and things that are being said. The real estate market collapsed 17 times already this year if you were to watch them, right? It just keeps collapsing every month. It's kind of annoying, and I think it's a net negative, and it's kind of what keeps reinforcing this flywheel of hopelessness. But as far as I can see it, to be honest with you, real estate prices dropping the way they are right now, especially 2025, we're going to end the year with a net negative median price, which is a big deal. You're starting to see like I'm starting to see deals pencil. Like you can buy, I saw a two-bedroom condo that you could buy and rent out immediately if you're an investor, for example, and it cash flows. Such a concept did not exist where you can buy something and that the rent pays for everything, maintenance fees, utilities, mortgage, principal pay down, the whole thing. Now you can find these things. We haven't seen this in maybe 10 years. You're starting to see if you want a house hack duplexes, you can live in the top floor, rent out the base, rent out the first floor basement. You can make it work, but obviously, I also feel on the contrary to that, I think people have gotten way too fancy. Like everybody's too good for that. I need a single detached, you know, in a nice suburb. Like I get it. Um, Speaking of people and getting broken by the quote unquote system, what kind of debts are breaking people right now? Are we talking still like credit cards or is it like lines of credit, car loans, mortgages? Like is the hierarchy still credit cards?
Yes. And if you look at the chart, because you can go to Statistics Canada and you can see, I mean, the line just keeps going up and up and up and up. So we are at record levels of credit card debt in Canada. And pretty much every month we set a new record. Obviously, there's some seasonality to it. You're heading into Christmas, credit cards go up. They sort of deleverage a little bit early in the new year. But yeah, the trend is still that. What is different now is that we've got lots of new ways to borrow. So, okay, you got credit cards, you got payday loans. I mean, they've existed for many years, but now the payday loan companies do installment loans. So I'm not just getting a $500 loan there, I can get a $5,000 loan there, obviously at very high interest. We've got buy now, pay later, which, I mean, that wasn't a thing 5 years ago, certainly wasn't a thing 10 years ago. But now when you go to the shoe store, it's like, hey, you can do this buy now, pay later thing. And it's like, okay, what's the deal? Well, the deal is you, instead of paying $200 today, you pay it off over a 6 week period or whatever. They've all got slightly different deals. There's no interest, no cost. Okay, why wouldn't I do it? And of course, what I do then is I only have to put $50 down when I buy the shoes today. Why don't I put $100 down and I can buy twice as many shoes because I'm deferring. So that's become a new way to borrow. And then you're right, car loans, because now I think you can get a 100-year car loan. I'm probably exaggerating a bit there, but you can certainly get an 8-year car loan, which 20 years ago that wasn't a thing. 30 years ago cars lasted for 5 years and they rusted out. So you couldn't do an 8-year car loan. But now in order to stretch it out, you can do that. And then of course, obviously, mortgages have always been a long-term a loan. The people who are coming in to see me are most of them are renters, not homeowners. And we publish this. It's on our website, the Hoyes Michaelis Homeowners Bankruptcy Index, which tells you the percentage of our clients that own a home at the time they file their insolvency with us. And if you go back to 2011, it was about a third of our clients. Because back then, okay, maybe you owned a house, but the equity in it was like $5,000. It wasn't worth that much. So even if you went bankrupt or filed a proposal, it wasn't worth that much. You weren't going to lose it. In August of 2022, for the first time ever, that ratio was zero. We did not have a single homeowner come in to file a bankruptcy or proposal because, of course, every house had gone up. So even if you bought the worst house in the worst neighborhood, well, it's probably up $100,000 since you bought it. And so even though you got $50,000 worth of credit card debt, no problem, refinance, sell the house, whatever, you're good. Well, that index has been gradually increasing. And we haven't published the numbers yet, but in October and November, the ratio will be somewhere around 10%. So obviously that's a lot less than a third when it peaked out in 2011, but it's a lot higher than zero where it was in August of 2022. So I believe that in 2026, I will be seeing more people who are homeowners or were homeowners who can no longer make a go of it and are coming in to see us. So the answer to your question is yes, I am seeing problems with every type of debt all the way up the ladder.
Yeah. The one thing I was always wondering, I think I told you before, I'm obsessed with cars. And I'm looking around, everybody's driving a $100,000 F-150 Platinum fully loaded, right? It's like it's no big deal now, 80,000, 100,000. And then on top of it, people are probably rolling in negative equity into their existing or new car loans because they bought stuff during COVID. I always thought, because you keep hearing in the States, that's a bit of an issue, not a bit, but it's a big issue. I was wondering in Canada if it's still an issue. So I was wondering if that's driving some of it, but I guess it's probably still a smaller subsegment.
Yes, and I drive a Lamborghini.
I know
So
you do.
that's not
A
true. I
Honda. You're a
drive
Honda guy.
a 2010 Honda Accord is what I drive. Because I'm cheap. I mean, I guess I could drive something better.
The
Yeah,
Lambo comes out on the weekends.
that's right. Only on weekends, not in snowstorms, that's for sure. So yeah, I mean, we've always had people who had, cars that were underwater and so my attitude is, look, if you're going to be filing a bankruptcy anyways, you might as well surrender the car, whatever the shortfall is, that just becomes part of your insolvency. We are not seeing a huge amount of that at the moment. One reason is if you live in downtown Toronto, you don't have a car anyways. It
Yeah.
costs you $200 just to park it. And if you live in the outskirts, well, you probably need your car because the reason you got a car is your shift at the factory starts at 5:30 in the morning and the subway or the buses aren't running at that point. And I guess the other reason we're not seeing a huge problem yet is people are able to kick the can down the road. Like you said, okay, well, my car's up for renewal. I'm going to lease another one, finance another one. Let's roll the shortfall into it. So yes, there are lots of people out there with a car loan or financing of over $100,000, which just blows my mind. But it's true. And since you're a car guy, I have a car story to tell you, which is totally irrelevant, and you can just edit it out of this at the end
No, no, it stays. Car stuff stays.
because it has no point whatsoever. But I took my car in to get the snow tires put on, and so I drive in, and I've been going to the same place forever. All the guys know me, whatever. Hey, great, how you doing? It's going to take a couple hours, whatever, would you, and would you like to, would you like to go back home and, wait until we come back and everything? And I said, oh, it's not really a big deal. And they said, well, no problem. I said, okay, well, do you have a loaner car or something? And he said, no, no, no problem. We'll just get you an Uber. Oh, okay. Interesting. So what about the old guy who drives the shuttle van? Yeah, we don't do it. We don't do that anymore. So they said, no problem. The Uber will be here in 4 minutes. Great. So the Uber guy gets there and I said, so what's the deal? And he said, oh, all the car dealerships now pretty much use Uber. They don't have their guy driving the shuttle bus. And the shuttle guy was always 80 years old anyways, so I don't know if it was safe that he was on the roads or not. But they have been replaced by the Uber guy. And I'm thinking about this going, is that not a microcosm of the economy as it used to be and is today? So the advantage of the car dealer having their own guy was that he would be driving you around in maybe one of the new cars. And so an old guy like me who's driving a 15-year-old car could go, boy, it's pretty nice. What does that button do? Oh, it's got a camera in it. That's the greatest thing I've ever seen. And so it was a marketing thing as well as a convenience thing. But I think the car dealers have realized, well, wait a minute, we got to have a full-time guy and maybe two or three guys full-time. So we're paying salaries and everything. We got the costs of the vehicles and insurance and everything else. And the customer has to wait for 20 minutes because the guy just dropped somebody else off and he's got to wait to get back here. Whereas the Uber guy will be here in 4 minutes and it's going to cost us $10 to have him drop you off at your house. So that's one of the things I think that's happening in the economy is that jobs that used to be there are being replaced by, certainly lower paying jobs. The Uber guy is not making as much as the guy at the dealership was making. And that filters all the way down through the economy. So if you're the guy who used to be driving the shuttle bus, the shuttle car, you're out of a job now, and that puts pressure on your whole finances. So I don't know if that's just in my town or if that's everywhere, but that's what we're seeing. The guy who drove me yesterday, I said to him, so tell me the story. So, well, I used to work in, a certain industry for many years, and those jobs just aren't there anymore. And so I'm 50 years old or whatever he was. I'm applying for other jobs, can't find anything. So what's my fallback? Uber. So he's got not a brand new car by any stretch of the imagination. It was probably 5 or 6 years old. And it's like, you know what? It's really easy. I download the app, I fill out some form or whatever, boom, and I'm up and running. So I think this particular guy, he understands the math. Yeah, okay, I'm depreciating my car and it doesn't really work, but I have no choice. I got to put food on the table. I can't find a job doing anything else. This is a job I can get into. So I think there are some people, in fact, most of the Uber drivers who I encounter, and I encounter a lot of them in my line of work, a lot of them, multiple ones a week. It's not an unusual thing. I think for most of them, it's like, well, I didn't have any choice. It's not like I decided to make this my career. I had no choice. I've got to do it. And yeah, you're right. My car is going to depreciate a lot quicker, and I'm going to have to drive it to the junkyard a lot quicker. But today, I brought in $50 and I only had to pay $20 for gas. Therefore, I'm $30 ahead. And that's what they're doing. Every week I see many Uber drivers. I don't think I've ever had anyone come in to see me who's a plumber.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, so I have had a couple of electricians come in, but that would be unusual to see an electrician. So, but unfortunately, in our economy today, we don't value someone like a plumber, which to me, if I was to rank every job in the history of the world, I would put plumber right at the top because number one, it's very important. And number two, 500 years from now, with all the AI and everything, we will still be using water and we'll still need plumbers. So maybe our economy's a little out of whack when we don't value plumbers as much as perhaps we should.
Just out of curiosity, any realtors come your way?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah.
How's that situation looking?
Well, not good. So, and again, I see as many realtors as Uber drivers. And
Oh, maybe it's the same thing. Maybe they do both.
Well, it's possible, and the story is always very similar. I talked to a guy yesterday, in fact, and it's like, okay, tell me the story. Well, 2 years ago I was doing pretty good, and I only needed to sell, I don't know, 3 or 4 houses a year or whatever it was, and I could make a pretty decent income. And but now I'm not, there's no sales. There's just nothing happening. And so all of my income is coming from lease deals, not sales deals. And because obviously there's more people renting than buying, and you don't make as much renting out a place, but you make something. And so if you can do two or three or four of those a month, okay, you can kind of make enough to cover your rent. You certainly can't be doing three or four full sales a month of a house or a condo or anything because there's just not that much activity. And you would know the math better than me, but how many realtors are there in the GTA and how many sales are there in the GTA? And I'm pretty sure it's an abnormal distribution. 80% of the sales are being done by 20% of the guys.
Yeah, probably
And
even it's probably like 10%.
yeah,
Yeah.
it could be even more skewed than that, which means that 90% of the people are selling nothing or very
Yeah.
close to nothing. And so, yeah, I end up seeing, and if when times were good, and this is the other thing about insolvency that people don't grasp, how is it that someone can come in to see me with 50 or $60,000 worth of unsecured debt, which is the typical average person I'm dealing with? Well, at some point, their credit was good enough that they could borrow that much money. And now they can't pay it back because of job loss, all the types of things we've talked about. And real estate agents are particularly prone to that because almost all of them have a vehicle. Kind of hard to go to showings on your bicycle. And if you're right in the downtown core and all you do is condos, then maybe you can get away without it. But most of them have a decent car, which of course costs money. And you've got expenses when you're a realtor. You've got your desk fees, you got advertising, whatever. And so the first sale you make every year, you don't get any money from that. That's kind of covering some of your expenses, maybe your second and third sale too. So it's a very difficult business if you haven't been in it a long time and have a big client base that can continue to refer you work because you're competing with everybody else. So realtors, as a result, can get into financial trouble, if they're not generating the income. So yes, I do see a lot of them.
Yeah, not surprised. And it's you can see it. I mean, I thought 23 was bad. I thought 24 was bad, and then 25 is like a completely different world of, and the statistics prove it. But um, out of curiosity, because the big story now is young kids can't find work and all this stuff. In terms of age groups, which age group are you seeing kind of crack right now? Like young adults, middle-aged, older, and how is that different from like maybe pre-COVID?
Well, historically, you go back 10, 20, 30 years, the average age of my client is always somewhere around 44.
Oh,
And I've got stats going back a couple of decades, and it only varies a little bit: 42, 43, 44, 45. And it's still the same today. And the reason for that is it takes time to get into debt.
mm,
So if you're 22 years old, the only debt you've got is a student loan. Nobody's giving you any other kind of credit. You've got to work for a few years to build up your credit to allow you to get credit cards, car loans, mortgages, whatever. So young people in general, like really young people in their 20s, sure, there are people who do file insolvency with me, but they would be a small number. If you're 80 years old, who cares? You're not working. They're not going to garnish your wages. You don't have to file. Same if you're 70, maybe even the same if you're 60. So, but when you're 44 years old, you've been in the workforce for 20 years or more. So you've had time to build up credit and debt, but you are also not at your peak earning years yet. You're not the president of the company. You're just the VP or the lead hand at the factory or whatever. You're not the supervisor. But your expenses are at their peak because you've still got your kids at home, so you're paying for them. Your parents are probably still alive. Maybe you're even helping support them. So your expenses are at their maximum, but your income is not at its maximum. That's when you get into trouble. Now, having said all that, yes, I am certainly seeing more millennials than ever. I guess that's not surprising because 20 years ago, millennials didn't have any debt because they were kids. So I'm definitely seeing more of those now, and about half of our clients are millennials, but that's because that's sort of in that 30, 40 year old range. We are seeing more older people too. People get to the end of their working career, and instead of having a paid off house and a pension like it used to be, it's like, well, I'm still carrying a big mortgage on my house because I had to refinance, and I've got all these other debts as well. I was like, okay, well, I guess you sell your house, and if that's not enough to clear your debts, then I guess we got to do something. So we are seeing it at all age groups.
Yeah, I see it too, which is very unfortunate, especially with reverse mortgages and things of that
Yes.
nature. They helped kids, and one thing that you recently said in one of your videos really caught me off guard a little bit. You said that you guys are seeing more delinquencies with higher incomes. What's driving that?
Higher expenses. Like
It's just
everything,
that simple.
yeah, everything costs more. So it's it's not that richer people are getting into more trouble. It's that the whole, band has moved up. So, and again, everybody watching knows what we're talking about here. So, I go to the St. Lawrence market to buy my coffee. I go to the roaster guy in the basement there and I buy the beans and everything. And at the start of the year, I think the beans were $19 a pound, and I think now they're $22 a pound because the price of coffee has gone up like, I don't know, 75% this year or something. And I realize
Yeah.
what I just said is not mathematically 75%, but go to the grocery store, you can see, and you can see it with beef and bacon and everything else. So it costs more to live. So even though maybe your incomes are going up as well, so you're now a higher income person, your expenses have probably, in a lot of cases, gone up even faster than your income. So how do you bridge the gap? With debt. And if you can't keep things in balance, you end up with debt problems. So yes, we are seeing higher income people, more higher income people filing insolvency than we ever have.
It's back from the car world again, because my reference point, everything in life is car prices and everything else. And from what I have seen, so everybody knows car prices are a lot more expensive than they were 10 years ago. What's interesting though, inflation adjusted, these cars are actually relatively in line with where they should be given what the input costs have been and all this stuff. So if you were to looking to buy a sports car that was $45,000 10 years ago and that car is now 80, well, it's not a surprise because well, I don't know if 80 is the number, but directionally, that's where it's at. So the conclusion a lot of people are coming to is that it's just a simple combination where everything has gone up, but wages have not kept up. And I think the explanation is probably as simple as it is today. Like when I was starting out, the big four accounting firms, what is it, like 15 years ago, were paying $45,000 a year to start as a junior accountant. You start out and whatever. And I don't think that pay band got raised for like a decade. I don't know what it is now, maybe 55, 57. I don't know, maybe I'm completely wrong. But that is massive deflation in wages. That's the equivalent of like making 27K back then in today's money. So it is it is wild. Um,
Yeah, and you're hitting on the really big picture. And just so you know, in 1987 it was 20,000. That's what I got paid at KPMG when I started there. The the natural state of the world, if you read the work of Jeff Booth, is deflation because that car that you just described is not the same car as you would have bought 20 years ago because it's got cameras and airbags and I don't know, gas pedals and whatnot. Mine still has a CD player. I don't think they have those anymore, but it's so the technology has gotten better and better and better and better. And in fact, I have this magical device now that I carry around with me, and I can push a button and I can get turn by turn directions out of the somewhere in the cloud, and it tells me where to go. for free. It costs zero. I'm accessing this satellite network and it tells me there's an accident over there, go over there. And that's free. So how is it that incredible technology is free and yet a pound of bacon costs a lot more? Is there anything else going on here? And the obvious answer is, well, yeah, of course. What we do as a society, as a government in Canada, US, everywhere, is we print tons of money and that inflates everything. So the things that are coming down in price should have come down in price way more. I mean, a car that was $25,000 probably should be 10,000 bucks today because aren't we producing and doing a whole lot better job of that? But because there's so much more money sloshing out there, it's raised the price of everything. And unfortunately, when money gets created, either by the government or by banks, which is where a lot of it gets created, it goes to the rich people first. You know, the Cantillon effect, whoever's closest to the spigot gets the water first. And so as a result, the rich are getting richer and the poor are left with whatever dribbles out of the hose at the end. And that's why we've got this feeling of helplessness, because if I am in the bottom 80% of society, I can see that that guy's doing way better than me, even though he's not smarter or working harder. He's just better positioned. And that kind of feeds the whole depression, the whole angst that we're having. So it's not something that somebody can just wave their fingers and solve the problem. I think we're probably in this mess for a while yet.
Yeah. On a more a slightly switching gears to real estate, I know you and Scott did a video and you were talking about the shrinking equity cushion problem, right, with HELOCs.
Hmm.
So, like, obviously, market prices of homes go down, so the equity cushion goes down. For someone renewing in 25 with almost no cushion left, I mean, we've talked about this before, and there's a big resistance to ever selling, even though that makes the most amount of sense. But, there's embarrassment and things of that nature, which totally makes sense. It's human nature. I totally get that. Are we still seeing that? Is that still the case today where people are just going right up with their backs against the wall? And, because I've seen it now. I've seen it multiple times where somebody should have sold last year. House is now in power of sale this year.
Yep, absolutely. We're still seeing that, and it's getting worse and worse and worse. And it's exactly what you said. And I have this conversation with people pretty much every day, and I say, look, let's do the math here. Do you think your condo is going to go up in value in the next year? Do you think it's going to stay flat? Do you think it's going to, like, what do you think is going to happen? Well, yeah, it's probably not going to go up in value. Okay, so you're paying $5,000 a month to live there when you add up mortgage and property taxes and maintenance fees and that special assessment that's coming because the elevator's busted and we all got to kick in 30,000 bucks and all that. Whereas if you were renting the exact same unit in the same building, you'd be paying a couple thousand bucks a month less. Yeah, but I don't want to sell it because it's the only thing I've got. I worked hard for this. I don't want to sell it. And of course, I'm sitting there going, well, but really, you don't own it. The bank owns it. So, but I get it. It's my house. It's my home. I've got a dog, I got a cat, I got a kid, I got a spouse. It's in the school district, whatever. So it is a very difficult thing. But yes, you're right. Again, mathematically, if I had a $600,000 in mortgages and HELOCs and whatever, and the place was worth 800,000, and now it's only worth 700,000. Yeah, my cushion has rapidly deteriorated, and that in a lot of cases means you can't sell the place because with selling costs, you will not get enough
Yeah.
to come out even. I talked to a guy yesterday. He's got a house north of the city. He bought it 9 or 10 years ago, and by 2022, it was worth 1,200,000. Notionally, whether it actually was or not, who knows? But now the units in his complex are selling for 800,000. And I think it's a townhouse condo. There's need a new roof, and so everyone's got to kick in 30,000 bucks next year. And so it's impossible to find a buyer now because
Yeah.
nobody wants to be hit with that charge. So yeah, the cushion is gone. The ability to use your real estate as an ATM machine. I get into trouble, I refinance, I get a HELOC, whatever. For a lot of the people, those days are long gone.
That is very interesting. And one thing I'll add to that, you hit the nail on the head. So there's a repricing of condos happen. This is particular with condos. There's a repricing happening because of how they were poorly mismanaged during COVID, where a bunch of stuff was deferred. The worst one I saw recently is maintenance fees have gone up so much. So a one bedroom, maintenance fees are usually between five, $600. Let's assume it's 500, 600 square feet, right? $1 per square foot per month. Let's say, kind of like as a general guide. This place, a one bedroom, the maintenance fees are about $900 per month. So it's almost $1.50 per square foot. There hasn't been a single sale in this building in the last 2 years, and there will not be a sale because there are so many towers. It's just not possible. And this is the other thing you're running into, where you may be married to this for the long haul. Like, I don't know how long it's going to take to resolve, if it even gets resolved or how it gets resolved. This is the first time we're seeing things like this. So it's very interesting, especially, yeah, like in the past, you wait, prices go up, values go up, and you're saved. You paper over everything. But right now, not so much. Two things you guys also talked about, I thought were very interesting. So using your HELOC for consolidation and the unsecured risk shift where you're transferring credit card debt into HELOC, which then creates this trap where potentially brings you closer where you have to sell. Is that an anomaly, or is that like an emerging trend right now?
Yeah, that's a thing. And conventional wisdom would be okay, I got a house that's got a couple 100,000 in equity. I've got $50,000 worth of credit card debt, and I'm paying 20% interest on that. So I go to the bank, I get a HELOC for 50,000 bucks, and the HELOC interest rate almost for sure is less than 20%. I don't know what it is, 8%, 10%, 12%,
Five, five, six. Yeah,
depends
depends.
on
Yeah.
your credit, right?
Yeah.
So, but let's say it's 6 or 7%. Okay, that's a no-brainer then. I put the 50,000 against my house. I pay off my credit cards. So now instead of paying 20% interest, I'm paying five, six, seven, whatever. Fantastic. And if the equity is there, you can do that. And for some people, the equity is still there. That's cool. But you're right. What you've now done is shifted from unsecured debt to secured debt. That's why the interest rate is lower. That's why it's simple as that. That's why the interest rate is lower. Well, if house prices continue to sag, and at some point you need to sell the house, well, now the equity is that much less. You may not be able to sell to get out. And if the equity is being substantially eroded, maybe you would have been better off filing a consumer proposal to deal with your unsecured debt rather than further encumbering your property. And of course, I don't know what the right answer is because I don't know what your property is going to be worth a year from now, 2 years, 3 years, and so on. If you're going to live there forever, I guess it doesn't matter. The price of your property does not matter if you're not selling. But if you want the flexibility of being able to sell, then yeah, you are eroding the equity. Might still be the right answer, but it's something I think a lot of people don't consider.
When it comes to debt like this, let's say I cleared my credit card, I put it in a HELOC. You guys brought up another thing that, again, I haven't thought about, but now that you bring it up, it makes sense from a human nature perspective. So it's the run up again problem.
Hmm.
You clear the balances, it's all
Yep.
consolidated, and then you have like, is this, I guess the part I'm trying to figure out, is this I'm just not able to keep up because of expenses? Is it psychological where I have this available room on my credit card? I can maybe now go on vacation. So it's a myth. Like you don't have that money. You never had it to begin with. Like which one is it? And is that still kind of like a triggering response that continues to happen?
Yeah, it's definitely a thing. And I mean, every situation is different, so I'm not going to generalize, but why is it you have 50,000 in credit card debt? Well, it's because you spent $50,000 more than you had. Not quite, maybe there was interest or
Yeah.
whatever. But so when you take your credit cards and roll them into your HELOC, does your monthly budget balance itself so that you do not need to draw on your credit cards? Well, if the reason you were using your credit cards is you're short in cash flow by 500 or 1,000 a month, then your credit cards naturally will continue to increase again. So it's not just because I love to spend money and I'm not responsible and I don't know what I'm doing. Sometimes that is the case. But in a lot of cases, it's just math. So before you start restructuring and getting HELOCs, and you got to start with the basics. What comes in, what comes out? Can I get that in balance? Because if I can't, unless you're the government of Canada, there is no mathematical hope. You will dig yourself into a hole. And that's a very difficult, analysis. It's not a difficult analysis. It's difficult to come to the conclusion that, yeah, I'm short. I've got to get a part-time job. I've got to take in a roommate. I got to rent out the basement, like you said. I've got to sell the place. I've got to cut back on my expenses. But you have to balance your budget or else you're going to have problems.
The it's yeah, this is the tough one. I think people know what to do, but I think taking action is very, very challenging. Um, your line of work, I think you're in this interesting position where you might have early indicators of where the economy is going. And the one big topic right now is economic job loss and all this stuff. So I had a meeting earlier today with a developer that does low-rise residential builds. They will do about 2,000 homes annually, and this has been going on for decades. And in 25, their work was cut 25% just because there's just no building happening. And in 26, it's going to be a further 50% reduction. So they're going to be probably at 20 to 30% of where they used to be. So now they're kind of trying to figure out how to keep their key people busy with different projects in lieu of just not being enough work. This data is obviously not showing up in the unemployment because I looked at the unemployment stats of Stats Canada and it doesn't seem like it's showing up, but yet you keep hearing headlines, unemployment, losing these jobs, closing this place, moving this to the US. Are you seeing that? Like, are you kind of seeing that firsthand where like more so than usual, or is it still relatively similar like it was in the past?
Yeah, no, I'm definitely seeing that. And you got to take all the stats with a grain of salt, okay? And I'm not a conspiracy theorist that they're all fudging the numbers, but let's think about this. So, 2 years ago, you were working at the factory getting overtime. So you were putting in 50 hours a week. Now, because of the slowdowns, you're getting 35 hours a week. You are still fully employed in the stats. Nothing has changed. Well, clearly you are less employed than you were 2 years ago. You're getting 35 hours, not 50. But that does not show up in the pure unemployment number, which is either you're employed or you're not. And it's only when you tip below 30 hours or 25 or whatever it is to flip from the full time to the part time that it starts showing up in the stats. And then when you lose your job, then obviously you become completely unemployed. So I think what we are seeing, I know what I'm seeing, it's underemployment. I'm also seeing a lot of people who have multiple jobs. And I don't want to get into the weeds about, unemployment statistics, but you can count the number of jobs or you can count the number of people working. Well, those are two different things if some people are working double jobs. So I think what's happening is people are not working as many hours, and you can see that. StatsCan does publish that stat. They are not getting as many dollars per hour as perhaps they were because my friend who used to drive the shuttle bus at the dealership making 30 bucks an hour is now driving for Uber making 10. So that doesn't show up in the pure unemployment stats either. So yes, we are definitely seeing that. And unemployment is a lagging indicator, meaning it's not in real time. So you lose your job today, do you become unemployed today? Well, no, because you've got a severance package, you're going to get paid for the next 2 or 3 months, and then there's a waiting period for unemployment. So you may not show up in the stats for 3 months, maybe it's 6 months, I don't know. So I think that number, the unemployment number, will continue to increase. I don't see how it can't. But yes, I'm definitely seeing that.
Yeah, that's even now that you bring it up, I know somebody that's a general manager running a couple of manufacturing plants in the automotive field. And that's exactly, you absolutely nailed it. So they haven't laid people off, but they're running less shifts. Therefore, there's less time, less overtime. I don't even know if there's overtime. Maybe there isn't anymore, but that is very true. You cut somebody from grossing 80 grand a year with overtime to now you're bringing them to like 55, which is their actual salary or whatever. So that's very interesting. Well, this is going to be great clickbait because obviously the world's coming to an end. So
Yeah.
on a more positive note, I mean, how do you feel about, I guess, look, government aside, I'm not overly impressed with, I haven't been impressed with the government for a long time, and that's just been the truth. But I feel Canada is it's such a rich nation. We have so many opportunities, so many things we could be doing that we, for whatever reason, aren't doing. I guess just real talk, like how positive or optimistic are you on Canada turning around long term? I feel like we've swung one way, obviously, to the net detriment, and I think that's across the globe, to be honest with you. I don't know if Canada is an isolated example, but I do think eventually things are going to revert back simply because this is not sustainable and so many people are hurt back. But that's just my take. I'd like to know somebody with more wiser, with more gray hair, which is obviously a testament to your wiseness. Mine's coming. I mean, you
Yeah,
have your hair, so that's
yeah,
fantastic.
that's it's well, you don't know if it's real hair or not, but
Why?
the so my opinion is you should never bet against the human race. We are undefeated. Nobody has wiped us out yet. So whether you're Canadian or not Canadian, we're all, I think, unless you're a robot, we're all humans. So I think ultimately humans will prevail, and I hope therefore that the Canadian humans will also prevail. Are we going to prevail tomorrow? I don't know. I, like you, have no faith in government either, but that's neither here nor there. I think I take everything down to the smallest unit, which is the person. And so I think whoever is watching us today, don't worry about what's all going on in the world because you can't control it. You can't control what the prime minister does or what that premier dude does or whatever. You can only, to a certain extent, control yourself. So my advice has always been the same, and it never changes. Keep your expenses as low as you can. Because what happens if you do lose your job tomorrow? Or what happens if you go from the example you just gave, I was making 80,000 and now I'm making 55,000. Well, if your expenses are $50,000 a year, you're still going to keep on trucking. So, do I really need five different streaming services? Like, is that really essential to my well-being? And I don't want to be naive here and suggest that by spending $15 less a month on that streaming service, all of a sudden your life is going to be better. But I think you do have to spend a month keeping track of every single penny you spend and see what you can cut out. So I do not go to the coffee shop. I make my own coffee. So I drink way more coffee than I otherwise would, and it doesn't cost very much. We make most of our food at home just because you go to a restaurant, it's really, really expensive. So what can I do to grind my expenses down, and what can I do to increase my income? And I think we all have to realize that ultimately we are all replaceable. None of us are irreplaceable. So, I mean, some of us, I guess, have a stronger position than others. I mean, my company name is Hoyes Michaelis, and I'm Hoyes, so it's kind of hard to get rid of me, I guess. But that doesn't mean my company's gonna last forever. So that guy who drove the shuttle at the dealership, and he's been doing it for 20 years, probably thought he'd just keep doing it forever, but now he's not. So you've got to look ahead and go, okay, I don't want you to be a pessimist. I want you to be a realist. What would happen if I lost my job? And the answer is, well, I guess I'd have to find another one. We'll start getting the ducks in a row for that now. Make sure your resume is fresh. Make sure you got a profile on LinkedIn or wherever people in your industry get jobs from. Maybe you do want to have a side hustle going, so if the main one goes down, you've still got something. I mean, you're in the real estate business. Well, you don't just sell units on Main Street in Oakville. Well, no, I sell houses, I sell townhouses, I sell condos, I'll do pre-builds. Like, you want to have as big a catchment area as you possibly can without overextending yourself. So I think yes, if you put some thought into it, then there is reason to be optimistic. And I agree with you that things get really bad and they get so bad that they have to swing back. That's how the pendulum on a clock works, right? It goes one way and it goes the other. And so I think, yes, as Canadians, we will probably realize that some of the stuff that's happened over the last 5 years was perhaps not optimal, and perhaps it swings the other way. I mean, I see that Alberta and the feds have made signed a piece of paper saying everything's going to be great. So now, does it mean anything? Probably not. But okay, you want a reason for optimism. There's two
Yeah.
people who have never agreed on anything. They actually agreed on something. So better than nothing, I guess. So yes, I think those would be the reasons for optimism, but you're the one who's got to take charge and do it.
One thing I just want to add to this because I am old school. Look, I'm a millennial in theory, but I think I'm a boomer at heart, or at least I was born a boomer. So, you mentioned about not buying that coffee or making your own lunch, and there's this whole movement online, people my age, younger, that is like a broke people mentality that's not going to move the needle. The streaming service is not going to move the needle, and I've thought about that, and I guess my counter to that is that the point is not the $15. The point is exercising the muscle of just be having the discipline to not spend money because when you see that $100 or whatever, $200 you saved month over month, it just reinforces the flywheel to hopefully get you in that mindset to just not spend money. That's the whole point. It's not the $5 you saved from going to McDonald's or Starbucks. But anyway, I don't know. I don't think that lands with people, or at least maybe you gotta just make the mistake so many times to finally
Yeah,
get there.
you
But
we learn from experience, and yeah, the answer is do the math for yourself. Like, don't listen to two guys on YouTube. What do we know? Write it down, take a look. And you're right, $5 is not going to make a difference. But $5 10 times, well, that's $50. Okay, well now we're getting somewhere. And $50 five times is $250. Okay, at some point it does add up to real money. So I think you make the decisions for yourself. And you might say to yourself, you know what? The most important thing in my life, I work hard, I get up early, I like to stop at the coffee shop and get a coffee. Fine, that's fine. Do that. And when I get home at the end of the day, I can't watch the Toronto Maple Leafs because that's just going to drive me crazy. I need to flip on Netflix. That's fine. Great. But you decide where you want your money to go, and nobody can criticize you for it. I think the problem is we don't step back and think about where we want our money to go. So do that, and you'll probably be in a way better position in the future.
here's an actionable tip. They can cancel Netflix, subscribe to your YouTube channel, and
There you
just binge your
go.
content from
Fan
beginning to end. And that's it.
Fantastic. And you can also save a lot of money on melatonin if you watch my channel, because it's great before bed, man. Our voices, they'll put you right under. So it's fantastic stuff.